So on this one, we're joined by the Athletics' Matt Slater and Adam Crafton. It never really went away, did it, Adam?
Not really. I think most English football fans would be surprised to learn, or maybe not surprised to learn, that even the English clubs are still, Matt, am I right in saying they've not actually extricated themselves yet from the legal process of
Not officially
leaving the Super League? Now, I remember at the time, people who work at those clubs telling me, we'll be out as soon as we can. It'll be a quick process. It's not that difficult to get out. I think the suspicion is, amongst some people in the game, and I think some people outside the game, are they staying in because it is genuinely a really difficult legal process and that's taking a lot of time? Or are they just waiting to see what's round the corner, whether opinions start to change, whether 2.0 can be workable in some way, which would maybe avoid them, I don't know, having to pay out whatever they owe from the first time around?
Let's deal with this presentation, and then that will open up all the other discussion points, really. That was put to clubs last week by A22. So who are they, Matt? And then what did they say?
Who are A22? What a question. Lots of people would like to know that. Where do I start? There are a couple of bankers, and that's not Ryman slang. They really are investment guys who are Madrid-based. One's Spanish, one's an American. They've grown, but that's initially back in April 21 when we first learned about them. They were like, how do they describe themselves? They are sort of the entrepreneurs investing in a new competition in European sport. That's quite a cute way of doing it, because I think it enables them to position themselves within the framework of European competition law, right? So you got UEFA, this big monopoly. We're a couple of investors. We've got a great idea. We've proposed it to these clubs. It's all very kind of arm's length. We're going to go out and get some money from another big bank. This is how you do things, right? Now, that's fine, and is certainly partly true. It's enough true, if you like, true enough to have got us this far. But they're very close to Real Madrid. One of them is a sort of, pal and long-term financial colleague of Florentino Perez, the president of Real Madrid. And so there's always been questions from UEFA and the European Club Association, and basically opponents of the Super League. It's almost the very first question they ever asked them. There was a notorious meeting. They came in to meet UEFA. They got slightly hijacked, actually. UEFA said, come in and meet us in our Neon headquarters, and then basically invited everybody else. And they ganged up on these guys for a couple of hours. But it really was, who are you? Who are you? And they've since appointed this guy called Bernd Reichart, who Adam alluded to. Is their sort of he's their spokesman. He's a really good communicator. Came from, I think he's a sort of German TV. I think he might have done a bit of weather reporting as well, which is what, again, they're the sort of football establishment are a little bit sniffy about this lot, and they can be a bit patronizing as well. So Bernd Reichart is the front man. Anis Lengaria and John Hahn are the sort of the financial guys, and they've got a little staff. So that's who A22 are. But it really is the very first question that anyone ever asked them: who are you? Who do you represent? Are you here on behalf of Real, Barca, and Juve? Are you here on behalf of some shadowy Saudi fund?
It sounds like the main suspicion is that they are linked to the original proponent of the Super League.
Yes,
that sounds like where the suspicion is.
That would be a reasonable suspicion, I think.
And also, we're coming from a starting point here, Adam, of there'll be suspicion because they are Madrid-based and therefore linked to Real Madrid. And as Matt has alluded to, before we get on to what they're proposing, there is immediate suspicion because they are not football establishment. And the football establishment is wary of anybody new, different.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There is always a fear of disruption and a fear of change. But I think in this situation, I mean, this competition, or what this competition has, or what this new proposal has been born out of previously, has been based on shadowy discussions and deceit and skullduggery and all of those fears. Therefore, I think you can understand are justified. There has been attempts to win in the courts against UEFA. I mean, this hasn't been a kind of let's come in and have a chat and a consultation in the front, going through the front door. I know they tried that a few months ago with UEFA, which is obviously a different way of doing it. But the general track record is we're trying to take UEFA's best and biggest competition, biggest asset, the Champions League, and do it ourselves. I mean, that's what this essentially boils down to.
So what were the proposals, Matt?
Well, the proposals are still a little bit vague. They really don't want to be pinned down. And it's quite interesting that they've even sort of said this much, because we're all waiting for this European Court of Justice ruling in March. We talked about it on the podcast a few times. We've had a really big steer as to which way it's going to go, because an advocate general has written an opinion. Now, that's not binding on the court, but the court does tend to follow the opinion, and that was produced during the World Cup, actually, and it was very much in UEFA's favour. So A22, European Super League, the sort of three Super League clubs were hoping that UEFA would be slapped down. Basically, you're a monopoly. You can't boss people around. You can't tell people, that they can't set up competitions. You can't sanction them, that sort of thing. So we'll see what the final verdict is, but it's looking like UEFA's position as the sort of governing body of sport has been enshrined again. I mean, this is sort of an ongoing debate all governing bodies have with European competition law. Now, I think they sort of feel the project's drifting a bit and they need to say something. So they've been doing this. They appointed this guy, Bernd Reichart, to go out and talk. He's done lots of stuff on social media. They had this meeting in UEFA that I referred to, didn't go very well. I think they sort of feel we can't just say we're talking consulting. We can't just keep pointing out the problems with the status quo, because they're quite good at that. They're quite good at pointing out that the Premier League is galloping off into the distance and that there are other clubs around Europe who are struggling. They can't keep pointing out that COVID was tough on the industry and that only the Premier League clubs have money to spend, and they're very good at identifying these issues. I think they felt they had to say something. So the big problem they had first time round was the closed nature of the project. They, I think, all realised that's not going to fly. Now, the European Court of Justice made that pretty clear, just in the line of questioning when they had their hearing, that was going to be a problem. That is against what they call the European sports model. This idea of a pyramid, people getting there by merit, basically the non-American way of doing things. Yeah, not a closed league. We don't like closed leagues. So the proposal is, instead of being, the first one was 15 permanent members and sort of 5 members that we'd invite. They never really explained how that was going to happen. So very limited turnover of teams. To go with, they're going to make it bigger. So they're thinking bigger, more meritocratic, 60 to 80 teams. They haven't said the format, how that would be divided. We're guessing a bit, 3, 4, 5 divisions. And they're talking about, clearly some sort of league basis, because they've criticised the UEFA's Swiss model. They're saying there's going to be home and away fixtures, and they're talking about a minimum of 14 games. And that's all they've said, really. Oh, and they've also just absolutely reinforced a couple of points. This isn't a breakaway league. We're not breaking away from domestic football. This is a midweek competition that replaces the Champions League, and that you will qualify for it via your performances in domestic football.
So it's just a different idea for a European competition from different people. I mean,
yeah.
if you break it down as simply as that, I'm guessing, Adam, that's what they would say.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, by the time that you've changed the Champions League model in 2024 and you've got that whole Swiss League idea anyway, I mean, it doesn't sound that different to the Champions League, which I suppose begs the question, Matt, is this just a case of Madrid, Barcelona coming up with these proposals because they're not prepared to accept we lost and we were wrong in the first place? Or is it, do they really feel that passionately about UEFA as a monopoly? Or is that just sort of a position that they've kind of shoehorned themselves into because a few old men basically can't accept we got it wrong and we blew it?
Great question. I think there's a bit of all of that in there. I think you're right. They are fed up with UEFA. And I think they make some reasonable points. They've always made some reasonable points. UEFA's position is a bit weird. It is a governing body, but it's also a regulator, but it's also a market participant. It runs the most lucrative football competition. It has two hats. And that's never sort of ideal from a governance point of view. Now, one of the things that came of the Super League was a sort of almost a recognition that UEFA needed to step back a bit. And it's now entered into what they're calling a joint venture with the European Club Association. So the biggest clubs and UEFA now are meant, we've not really seen the evidence of this yet, but the idea is that there's going to be a 50-50 in terms of how they market the competition, how they sell the TV rights abroad. And I suppose the first example is, for years and years and years and years, there was a Team Marketing, which is a Swiss-based, it's basically UEFA's sort of side hustle. Would do all the rights. The rights packages in North America went to a different body. Right, so there was the first sort of evidence that cozy relationship that UEFA would have a complete hold over everything was going to be different going forward. I think the clubs, who, bear in mind, run things like the Premier League and La Liga and what have you, are saying, well, ideally UEFA, you'd get out of the way completely. So we've gone half the way. I think the other thing is it different? Is how different is this to the Swiss model? I think there is, because they're being quite careful about not saying everything straight away. There is still this sort of idea of retained places. So it's a bit complicated. So this goes back to the very first iteration of the new Champions League, which came out in 2019, which is really complicated. It was almost going to turn the 3 midweek competitions into sort of 3 leagues, and you'd be promoted and relegated from season to season. And there'd be very limited fresh blood, if you like, coming in from domestic football. I think the Champions League was only going to be 4 places that would come in somehow, again, never really explained, via domestic competitions. The rest would be, you could be like the 10th best Champions League team, but you'd retain your place. The big clubs love that. It's that certainty. It's that repeat prescription of the big Champions League money.
But if you're Real Madrid, you have that certainty.
Well,
anyway.
quite.
Yeah.
So I would get that if it was, I don't know, Tottenham, Arsenal, those clubs that are, well, not Arsenal this season, but those clubs that are competing, that are 7 into 4 into 7. Yeah. Whereas Real Madrid, they're never not going to be in the Champions League because of their own league. They have so dominated.
The real uncertainty is, you're right, Adam, comes from the Premier League. That at the moment strikes me as where you are not guaranteed your place, and you could at a stretch say Serie A as well at the moment. Inter or Milan or probably Juve miss out miss out every now and then because of how Atalanta have been run, or Napoli, or
a Marseille or a Leon. But or
actually,
an Ajax.
Real Madrid and Barcelona and Bayern probably are the 3 who are always guaranteed it.